New Delhi has said both sides agreed to work urgently for troop withdrawal at the line of actual control, a demarcation that separates Indian-controlled territory from Chinese-controlled territory. This came after Dr. Jaishankar met Wang Yi in Laos for the ASEAN foreign ministers' meeting. They committed to work for, quote, complete disengagement at the earliest possible time. So, Dr. Arun, let me come to you first. Do you see Jaishankar's comments as a strategic move by India to essentially build up global pressure on China?
Well, actually, no. If you read the there are joint statements and the opening remarks by the foreign minister as well. So one thing that India and China have both agreed upon is that they do not need interference of any third party. It is an issue between India and China, and they are going to resolve it between themselves. So mounting global pressure may not be a move or intention behind it, whereas disengagement at the border, this has been said by the foreign minister from earliest as 2020 that this was necessary for bilateral ties to improve, that without disengagement and the pre-April 2020 status quo, the relations are not going to improve. So this has been a line that they have been saying for a while now.
And can you briefly, for our international audience, tell us about what those agreements were that were signed by both sides that Jaishankar is referring to?
There were, in the talks before, there were agreements that they spoke of not entering each other's decided upon lines at the LAC, line of actual control. So there were these agreements that both sides had signed, implying that they will not disrespect mutual integrity. They will respect each other's security and respect each other's territorial integrity.
Okay. Professor Chen, you heard there what Dr. Arun was saying. This is nothing new. Do you agree with that? And how do you think that China will respond, given that they have just days earlier had agreed apparently for troop withdrawal?
Yeah, Dr. Arun is completely right. Minister Jaishankar has been talking about this since 2 years ago. So this statement is not new, and this expectation from India that China would abide the agreement that is set up earlier and disengage from the border has been there for some time.
Now, further to his meeting with Wang Yi in Laos, Dr. Jaishankar wrote on X, "The state of the border will necessarily be reflected on the state of our ties. Agreed on the need to give strong guidance to complete the disengagement process." Now, this reinforces the Indian statement following ASEAN. Peace and tranquility on the borders and respect for the line of actual control are essential for normalcy in bilateral relations. Professor Chen, let me come to you. So following the Galwan incident in 2020, routine sort of diplomatic relations, bilateral talks, apparently 30 such mechanisms between the two sides were abandoned. And then this year, after Modi's re-election, Xi Jinping did not congratulate him. And at the recent Beijing-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Kazakhstan, Modi skipped that. How do you see then these recent talks between Jaishankar and Wang Yi? How do you see that? Is it evidence that both sides are now trying to come together, trying to make something happen?
As far as I can observe, I think that diplomats, senior diplomats, have been trying to resolve the situation. So there has been a lot of diplomatic dialogue and joint statement even, but the situation on the ground didn't turn out well. So nothing has changed since 2020. In fact, you can even say that the tension along the border is even worse right now because there are more and more regular military presence along the different borders, different part of borders. So I think this also frustrates the Indian Foreign Ministry because despite a lot of promises or agreements with their counterparts, the situation on the border, along the border, does not seem to get well.
Do you think the blame for that is on the Chinese side?
Well, I think both sides blame each other. I think both sides
So
blame
neither
that.
sides have actually withdrawn? Or is it the case that the Indian side did attempt to do that, the
Well,
Chinese didn't?
The fact is more complicated than that, as far as I can understand. So, because the territories along the LAC is uninhabitable. So, when we say you have military presence, it means that they will go to certain territory, patrol, and come back. So, this kind of action did not stop from the Chinese side. So the Indian side also try to do the same. So the complete disengagement from LAC means that both sides have to step down, right? But each side is saying that you should step down first and let me verify that you are not present, and then I will step down. So here we have a stalemate here.
Right, okay. A stalemate, Dr. Arun, and yet there was speculation by some in the international media that ahead of the meetings at ASEAN and Quad, that there might be some softening on both sides. Modi's poor or poorer election result as a result of not being able to generate employment, his record of, and that therefore he can no longer ignore or turn a deaf ear to the manufacturing side of the economy. So, for example, that the Indian budget had provisions for attracting Chinese FDI, foreign direct investment, that there had been pressure on the government to relax the requirements for Chinese visas, businesses also to bring in Chinese technicians and workers, this sort of thing. So what's your assessment of that? Do you think that there was any form of softening?
Rather than form of softening, let's take it one by one. The FDI suggestion was made by the Economic Survey. So Economic Survey is a report. It's more for academic purposes rather for policy making. So that may in turn become a policy, which we don't yet know. But the overlining thing would be that India released Press Note 3 in 2020, which said that any country that has land border with India needs to go through the approval process by the government, and the automatic approval has been withdrawn. So which supersedes any suggestion or any policy that India might have regarding FDI, that even though we might want to invite Chinese investment in manufacturing in India, it will still need to go through the government approval, without which you cannot have manufacturing in India by the neighboring countries. So that is one. Secondly, India does import machinery, and there are investments, previous investments by Chinese in India, for which we do need technicians, engineers, professionals. So one thing that has been seen is that the visa restrictions that were spoken of earlier, that in November the visa restrictions were relaxed, that was in part due to needing of these professionals to come to India, because we have imported machinery from them. So we need to bring the professionals from the country, obviously.